Hey, I'm Chris Beaver, co-founder of AdvisoryCloud. Welcome to the AdvisoryCloud podcast, where we explore the insights and strategies of some of the leading business clients. On today's episode, I'm really excited to introduce George Thomas. He's an HR strategy leader with over 25 years of experience across industries like retail, healthcare, and technology. He's currently leading Total Rewards, and with past roles at Levi Strauss and Infosys. He brings a deep understanding of compensation strategies and HR practices globally. So we're really excited about the conversation today. As I mentioned, I'm Chris Beaver, co-founder of AdvisoryCloud and host here at the AdvisoryCloud podcast. If you don't know about AdvisoryCloud, go check us out, advisorycloud.com. We help executives and companies connect with advisors that can help them solve problems and drive their businesses forward. We've made over 10,000 connections in the last year alone. So whether you're looking for guidance in your role or at your company, we can help out. Again, get started for free at advisorycloud.com. George, let's hop into a little bit more about your background. Give us an idea of kind of how you define this total reward strategy. I know that's obviously a big piece of, what you've built and what you've been working on. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and why that's really critical for businesses.
Sure, Chris. Thank you for the intro and my pleasure to be here. So I think the word total rewards is an evolution in itself, and it's a representation of several pieces. One we are pretty including compensation, but it's much more than that. It's compensation, it's benefits, it's learning opportunities in the organization. It's about wellness, and it's about how you feel, connected to what the companies are really doing. And I believe there is a play in making sure that connection between what the company is doing and how you get rewarded is kind of connected by the total reward strategy.
Right. No, love that. That's great. And then one of the other things that I know you've talked about and worked with is this idea of job architecture, and how that plays into, again, that broad-based compensation, employee satisfaction. Talk to me about job architecture and what that means for you, and maybe even how you've implemented or worked with that in different companies.
Sure. So the one thing which is unique to each company is its business model. Like how a company operates its operations is very unique, and it's important to make sure that that is clearly understood. We very often get caught up in market benchmarking and trying to benchmark roles and so on, with the assumption that the role is being performed the same way in every company, and that's not necessarily true. So I think what's important to note is how you do your business actually helps you design your organization. So it goes into this whole concept of organization design. And that actually informs you about the type of roles that you really want in the organization. So what are the jobs? How do you really kind of structure the jobs? What is it that the company really values from a job perspective? And that determines the relative importance of different jobs. And that also helps you inform what is core to your business, what do you want to keep inside the company, what you want to outsource, and so on. So getting that piece of work done is extremely critical, not only from a total rewards perspective, but from generally, how do you really reward success at the end of the year for any associate here?
Got it. That's a great point, and something that I hadn't, thought about specifically, but makes complete sense. Not every role is the same within different companies. So those benchmarks and different pieces don't always necessarily make sense and apply across organizations, let alone, you get into different industries and things like that. So, yeah, that's great. And I think alongside that, you mentioned benchmarking, and something else that, kind of along those lines that I know you've worked with and spoken about is pay transparency. And how has pay transparency evolved in sectors that you've worked in? I know there's been a lot of discussion, especially the last few years, it feels like, around pay transparency, and some companies and maybe even some industries that's still a very touchy subject, but other areas that's really, it is coming to the forefront in terms of strategies that they're using. So I'm curious, how does that play into kind of this idea of total rewards, job architecture, and how do you see that pay transparency kind of movement, if you will, evolving?
It's interesting because when I started my career, compensation data was sacred space. A few people knew it. It used to be pretty much handled right at the top of the organization. In the past 2 decades of my being in this space, it's clearly changed. Two big drivers. One is technology, of course. The fact that you can actually process information so quickly and be able to analyze information lends itself into a certain space of comfort for the management, to know that, okay, I think I'm doing all right. Maybe I worked by my instincts earlier, but I can analyze this data and I can tell you that what I did was right. And that also actually brought out the whole biases that could potentially come out. It started with pay equity. So I think there have been a lot of published reports on pay equity, especially on gender, and then on ethnicity and so on. And I think that has kind of given way into regulatory compliance under for pay transparency. So if you recall, during COVID, we had a lot of regulatory compliance under sick leave and, benefits around leave and so on.
Right.
Coming out of COVID, I think there's been a lot more focus on pay transparency. And this is a good thing, I believe, because it really helps individuals who are making a play in the organization or from outside the organization to really understand where they stand and what their chances are and how it really matches up. So it's here to stay. I believe there will be more adoption of paid transparency. The one phase that is making waves right now is Europe. Europe's actually kind of pushing regulation on the pay data, the pay and job data, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, it's here to stay,
Yeah.
and I think it's good. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in terms of that, pay transparency and obviously pay equity, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see organizations facing as they look to move towards pay equity, and how can they work to overcome those?
Yeah. So there is a spectrum, okay, in the whole pay transparency space. On one end of the spectrum is total pay secrecy, where you kind of just keep everything under wraps and just kind of reveal what you want to reveal. I think the steps in the journey are really, how do you educate your people of how is it that pay decisions are taken? I think that's an important step. It's a big step in actually kind of telling people that this is where you are in the range and so on. And then there is the whole process of educating the managers, the leadership, to equip them in the right way. Like, you want them to talk the same language that you talk as a total rewards professional. But I think that is a very critical part of the whole journey, because again, we have to educate our managers in a way that you're not overloading them with too much information. I, as a total rewards person, I benchmark the market. I know what other companies do. I can't replicate everything that I know in the mind of the manager, but I just need to make sure that he or she or they are equipped appropriately to deal with questions coming their way and actually speak for the company. I think that's going to be the most critical part of the journey in actually enabling this.
Yeah.
Besides that, I believe the philosophy of pay transparency has to be absorbed in letter and spirit. So if you notice job postings on job boards today, you have some companies who would do truncated ranges, some who would do like a world of ranges, like a 0 to a 250,000. Like, that's just
Right.
bizarre. So I think point is, how do you kind of treat it in a positive light and really take a call right at the top, to be able to, show and review what you do. The good thing, Chris, I'll add over here is that listed companies have an obligation to do their filings, and you will find that the executive's pay is available for you to see. And anybody can go in and look at the 10K forms, right? I think it's going to be a step down to see how much we want to go to. Again, the idea is not to show what your colleague's getting or what the person across the aisle is getting, but more for you to understand what can you do to get better in the range and kind of work things through.
Right.
Eventually, these are controls, these are guidelines, and it's meant to achieve a purpose, and that connection is what's most important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You mentioned obviously with, the SEC filings, 10Ks, things like that. But you also mentioned a few moments ago in terms of Europe and some of the changes there. So I want to just touch on kind of regulatory compliance for a minute. And, with that changing regulatory landscape, what are you recommending, or, what are you recommending that companies do to kind of prioritize and ensure compliance, not only today, but also in the future and potential changes coming down the line?
Okay. But when you hear about companies operating in the US, I hear California come up quite a bit because California is probably leading in most of these practices, and people think of it as a administrative burden to comply with all the data that is being asked to be published and so on.
Right.
I think it's a good thing. So my first call for action would be comply, absolutely comply in spirit and in letter. And I think the more you get into the space, the more you'll appreciate why it is a good thing for companies to go down this path. It helps people relate to the organization a lot better. Otherwise, you have employees who would say, "My comp is why I left the company, and my comp is why I decided to kind of go another direction." I think it's a lot more than that. People don't talk about it much. You want to change the language of that conversation to say, I connect with the company for a certain reason. I connect with the company for a balance of several reasons. Let me put it that way. I think understanding that psyche and understanding that persona is important. We do have some persona analysis in terms of Gen Z and Gen Alpha and the baby boomers and all of that. I think it goes a little deeper into that and figuring out what really helps individuals connect. So yes, comply absolutely, and then look for the actual reasons why people want to stay with the company and grow with the company.
Right. Absolutely. And in terms of that, you mentioned this a little bit, and I think it because it encompassed a lot of what you've been talking about, data utilization, and how has the increased availability and not only availability, but also easy access across the organization in many situations. How's that access to that data transformed HR practices, obviously specifically when speaking with comp and looking at pay equity and total rewards?
Here's where I would make a distinction between industries. Because I think people working in the technology space have an edge over here because of the advent of so much HR technology. When I started my career, there was just maybe 2 or 3 big pieces of software which would handle organizational compensation. So you name it, the SAP, the Oracles, and so on. And then, we moved into this whole cloud-based evolution of the big tech companies. And you have companies like Workday, which are pretty much all-encompassing. But what I'm seeing now is that there is so many niche technology offerings in the HR space, which can really help you understand where we are and what we're doing. And this I speak as an individual, not as a company person. There is a software which can help you scrape off data from all job postings or all published data and be able to kind of present it to you in a way that you can. I mean, it was amazing, pay scales and the salary.coms and all of that. It could actually tell you things that you never could get to earlier. So there's an evolution on the user side of things, and then there is an evolution on the company and the organization side of things. In the past, I've noticed that companies shied away from trying to implement too many point solutions because of the integration challenges between all of these systems. I think that has been made much simpler. It's still a little bit of a gray area, but I think it's been made a much simpler. If you take recruiting as an area, right? I mean, you have so much AI going into it. It's good and it's bad because AI is also kind of trained in some sense. It goes by rules. It goes by some sort of algorithms which are really tracking things through. But I think it's only going to get better. And we should know for a fact that the data analysis that goes into all HR paths is really significant. I will make this point. If you look at a job posting for Google in HR, you're likely to see that the HR person is going to have a lot of tech experience to be able to do, the kind of data required. It's not your traditional HR experience of working with people and, trying to design a program and so on. It's a lot more. So I think that's evolution and that's technology, right? When it comes to the other industries that I've personally experienced, retail and healthcare, people are not using a computer screen all the time. They're doing other things, right? So because of the lesser time they spend, they are kind of trailing on this. Hey, that's why you have all these nice apps that come through on your phone, which you can use and kind of get through. So yeah, they're catching up fast, but it's certainly lagging a little bit with technology. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So in terms of that technology, let's talk a little bit more about kind of not only technology's role, which I think you've touched on, but where do you see the technology going? I mean, not to lean into the buzzy topic of the day, but you did bring up AI and its use in HR. Where do you kind of see the future of technology in the HR space moving?
So I believe there are two, three niche areas that really need to get that fixed. So if you look at an employee life cycle, I think there are two parts to it. One is the whole candidate part of it. I won't talk much about it because there is a whole lot of recruiting work which is going on. And then there is the from hire to exit data, which actually resides within the organization. So in one of my past experiences, I kind of liken, there's an analogy, right? There is the jobs in a company are like a stock exchange, right? And as an investor, you can choose to put your bets and place your bets and saying that I want to do X or I want to do Y, and be able to kind of weigh yourself into that. That goes back to my first point. Do you have a good, clean job architecture which speaks to the business design and the business outcomes? Right? If you're able to put that out and can really use that within the organization, allowing individuals to actually place themselves where they want to be and therefore be able to get specialized or grow in a certain area, I think that's the ultimate utopia of using technology within the organization. Now that's a far cry. It's not going to happen overnight, but that is exactly how Gen Z or Gen Alpha is going to want to be treated. I believe they know what excites them. What is it that they really want to do? Instead of somebody sitting and telling you, hey, I think this is what you're skilled at, or this is what you can do. I think you got to connect to a more inner self for them so that they can make their ploy and make their bet. The lag today is that there are lots of individuals involved. There'll be HR, there'll be a career manager, there'll be a business leader, and then everybody's got to sit in and say, okay, let's see if this person fits into this and does not fit into it, and so on. I think there is a potential for technology to really make that easy and simple. But it's some time away. Can AI play a role in that? Possibly, it can. I think current role of AI is more about content and narrative, which is based off past experiences. I think there's going to be an evolution, so that utility of the generative part is going to be limited. But there could be other areas where I think AI will play a part. But I believe there is a lot of play in that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So really interesting. And just to kind of bring this back a little full circle to where we started the conversation, which was around total rewards. And just now you were speaking about kind of, these new generations coming up and how they're going to want to be treated in the workplace in terms of that kind of total reward idea. You've obviously observed a number of organizations and, how they're, using that and moving around there. But, based on your experience, what are some of those key factors that people should really be keeping an eye on around designing these incentive models and changing these, incentive models to really drive desired employee behavior and organizational outcomes? What are the key pieces that companies should be keeping an eye on there?
Yeah. The reality of business, Chris, is that you invest in money and you're generating some profits out of it, right? I think that's the real crux of the whole space. Every company exists because they need to sustain themselves and they need to grow, right? I think if that universal truth is acknowledged, I think we got to figure out how does playing with human resources actually support that goal, right? So it's all about figuring out the correlation between your success outcomes and the behaviors that people are actually working through. At the macrocosm, like if I take a retail store, right, it's a microcosm of a business, right? There is a certain revenue they hit, there's a certain profitability they hit, and it's because of what they do in the store that they're actually able to drive those profits. So, you take the life of a store sales associate, and they're trying to actually help you gain the business. So on one side, people getting into the store is beyond their control because that's something that is driven by brand marketing and so on. So that's beyond it. But once the person is inside the store, I think there is a lot of influence they hold in trying to influence the buyer. And I think understanding what are those capabilities that really help individuals play is what makes the difference. So what I'm saying is, if I can correlate behavior to the success measures, I believe that will be the first step in the journey. Second step is figuring out how can I actually compensate for that. Now, I could go into the market and figure out how other companies doing it. That's one source for sure. Another source is I want to know from a recruiting standpoint how people being treated outside and working through this, and then kind of working a plan that really makes the difference. So your incentives today for convenience, most companies would say, I'm going to base your incentive on the company performs, which is great. But to a retail store associate who's sitting far away from the big financials of the company, it's difficult to correlate. I think you've got to get it closer to what they can influence. Now, companies shy away from that because it's an administrative hassle, and that's where technology plays a role. How can you leverage
Okay.
technology to bring the incentive closer to you and help the individual connect to the larger purpose of the company? Yes. I know at this point in time it may sound philosophical, but it's doable. And I think it is the journey we're going to get through to. Yeah. So
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, George, I'm so glad that we had an opportunity to connect today. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you joining us here on the Advisory Cloud podcast, and we wish you the best of luck on the Advisory Cloud platform. So for those of you watching on YouTube, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel. We publish new interviews regularly with leading executives, just like we saw here today. So we really appreciate it. George, thanks again for your time. Look forward to speaking with you again soon.
thank you so much, Chris. My pleasure. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.